Carolyn Dube here. Oh, what's the play for today? Well, today it's all about the perfectly imperfect image transfer. Now, you might be wondering, why would I want an imperfect transfer? I mean, of course, if I'm transferring, don't I want every edge and every bit of it to be perfect? Not always. Sometimes the surface that I'm putting it on isn't perfect. The print or the paper that I'm putting on, a slightly irregular look, some edges that aren't quite perfect, actually fits the look of what I'm doing. Like with this gel print here that I put this image transfer on, this whole print was imperfect, so a perfect image transfer on this just wouldn't have fit. And in this video, I'm going to share with you what you need to know when you want to have those imperfect edges, and then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of examples with it as I'm playing around with the InkAid image transfer process. I'm going to do two prints here side by side for you. That way you can see what one where I'm trying to get perfect edges looks like versus the imperfect. Now I'm going to trace around each of these so that we can see where the edge of the photo is, but that's simply for illustrating the process to you. When you're doing this, you do not have to do this. Generally, when I'm doing an image transfer and I want imperfect edges, or even when I want perfect ones, I just eyeball it. What I'm going to be using to do this transfer is the InkAid transferees. What's in that jar is the concentrate. You've got to mix it up to create the solution. And if you've never done this before, no worries. I've got a full-length video for you that goes in deep so you can fully understand the process, and I'll have that link down below for you. Notice as I'm applying that transferee solution that I am going well past the lines, the edges of what the transfer will be. And that's very intentional. Anytime I want to make sure that I get the full image, that I want the edges to be exactly the way they are on the transfer, I always go beyond it. Now I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes because that's the amount of time I need to let that sit there before I lift that film up. And while we're waiting for that one, let's start on the other one. Now, as I apply the transferee solution, I want you to notice this time how I'm staying inside the edges. Now there is something that I'm doing over on the right side that isn't very obvious at the moment. It looks like I'm putting the transferee solution evenly over there on the right side, but I'm actually not. I'm actually going with a really light coat of it. And when I lift up that transfer film, you will see what happens because of that. And did you notice how I just kind of rubbed the image transfer before I put it down there? That's because I wanted to make sure that it was the ink side going down. And you might be wondering what exactly that photo is printed on. That is a piece of transfer film by InkAid, and it was printed on an inkjet printer with pigment-based ink. If you're new to the InkAid image transfer process, you might have questions about what I just said or other things about this process. And that video I mentioned a little bit earlier that takes you step by step through everything that you need to know to make your first image transfer, yep, that video will answer a whole bunch of your questions. And again, that's linked down below for you. Well, the 2 minutes are up now, so I can start lifting off that first image transfer. I'm going to grab a corner and then just lift very gently. The excess transferee solution that's around that image transfer, that will evaporate, disappear, and you won't even see it once it's dry. Whenever I want to have all of the edges transfer, like I did here on this pink one, I always go well beyond the edge of where it is when I'm adding that transferee solution. Here on the orange one, very little of that transferee solution is beyond the edges. Just a little bit up there at the top, that area up there, that's the only bit of transferee solution that went beyond the edge of the image that I want to transfer. So now that the 2 minutes are up for this one, I'm going to just gently peel it up. But I want you to notice how much of the right side didn't transfer. Anywhere where you didn't have any of the transferee solution, it won't transfer at all there, like up near the top. But down there in the bottom corner, you can even see where the paper is still a little damp from that transferee solution. So why didn't that part transfer? Well, that's because there was such a small amount of it there. There wasn't enough to do the image transfer. So that's why that corner was very imperfect. So now that you know the process of how this works, let me show it to you a slightly different way. So with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the image transfers look like, and then I'm going to show you how I got them to happen. So on this first transfer, I've got some edges where it's nicely rounded. There's some irregularity, as well as some areas that are straight. And then I've got these little areas in here where it's like it didn't really transfer very well. There's a little bit there, but it's wonderfully imperfect in those pockets. Now the second image transfer here, it's going to look dramatically different than the first one. The edges, notice how very, very irregular those are in comparison to that one before it. So how did that happen? Well, now that you know what the image transfers look like, let's go back a step and you can see when I'm applying the transferease solution, what the difference was between these. Where I'm putting that transferease solution and how much of it that I'm putting on there will determine what the transfer looks like. So in the middle, I've got more of that transferease solution, and around the edges, I'm doing it a little bit lighter. So there's going to be a little bit less. And in just a moment here, I am going to freeze the camera so that we can talk about the area that really has less. That bottom left area, can you see how it looks a little bit wispy down there? That's because there just isn't enough of that transferease solution to get a solid, clear, complete image transfer there. And guess what? I love that look when I'm doing these imperfect ones, so I will intentionally put areas with a little bit less to purposely make those areas of imperfection. Because I'm going to use a brayer to make sure that I've got contact between the image and the transferease solution, a little bit of that transferease solution from the middle is going to kind of push out, roll out in the upper left. If something like that is what you don't want to have happen, then feel free to just gently press it down with your hand. But for me, I really prefer to use the brayer. But again, it's personal preference. So now let's take a look at the second one. And as I'm applying this, I'm going to stay in a much smaller area. I'm also going to be very jagged about this. And that's what's going to create that very irregular, very imperfect edge for this. There tends to be more of the transferease solution in the middle with the way I've applied it and less on the edges, which helps add to that irregular look on those. Because again, the amount of transferease solution that you're using does have an impact on how much of it does transfer. Now this part probably isn't a surprise to you. Because I used less of the transferease solution for this transfer, there isn't going to be any of it kind of seeping out of the edge when I use that brayer to press it down very, very lightly. Now you know why, when I lifted up that transfer film earlier in the video on these two, why they had different looks to them. So now that you know how the process works, let me show you a couple of different examples of when I used the imperfect edges. Here I've got this gel print and I've got that wonderful yellow area in the middle, and I want to get the image transfer just on that. And I don't want it to be perfect because the paper that I'm putting it on, the pattern that's underneath there, is definitely imperfect. I'm double checking here to make sure that that is the printed side, because I do want to make sure it's the printed side that goes down into the transferease solution for this to work. And how do I know that it doesn't work if you use the other side? Yeah, I've done that before. I'm only adding the transferease solution here into that yellow area because that's the only area where I want the image to transfer. And the edges, I want them to be wonderfully imperfect. Now, once I put the image on top of this, I'm going to then gently press it down into the transferease. I could use my hand, but I really like using a brayer. But when doing the brayer with these imperfect edges, sometimes you will end up pushing some of that transferease solution out one side, and I did that a little bit on the left there. You'll see after our 2 minutes are up when we lift it off what happens because of that. Now it's going to be over on the upper left side of this transfer, and you and I know what happened, but anybody looking at this transfer isn't really going to know why that happened. They're going to think it was just part of the plan because this has a very irregular look to it because it's going on this gel print here that has all these wonderful irregular things on it. Oh, and by the way, the leftover images over there on that transfer film, I will save that and I will use them another time. Nothing has to be wasted with this. On this perfectly imperfect image transfer, I'm just going to keep the transferease on the blue painted area because that's where I want the pattern to transfer. Now the thing that I'm using here, this is another gel print. They're one of my favorite things to do image transfer on, but this is not the only surface that you can use. Along with paper, you can do fabric, wood, metal, lots and lots of options with these image transfers. Once you've got the transfer film on there, then you wait 2 minutes and then lift it up gently. And each time that I say 2 minutes, it's not like it has to be 2 minutes to the second. I'm just really terrible about knowing how much time has elapsed, so I need a timer to keep me in the about 2 minute range. And the pattern that's left on that transfer film, you bet I'm going to save that because I can use that another time on another project. All right, so one last example for you here. This one is using, yes again, another gel print. And what I want to do is get some of the kids from that school photo in just the teal area at the top. Now, one of the great things about using digital images to do this or printing them out on our own inkjet printers is you can make them whatever size you want. So this one is a smaller version of the same image that you saw me do on the other gel print because I just wanted to be able to get more of the kids into that. So that's why I just printed a smaller version of it. And so I've put the transferees just where I want the image to be. And that's going to create the irregular shape that's going to match just about where that teal paint is. I'm going to wait my 2 minutes and then I'll lift up that transfer film. Now I only put the transferee solution on the teal, but when I lift this up, you'll notice that some on the orange transferred and some on the yellow. And that's because some of that transferee solution moved around as I was rolling the brayer on top of it. And I love how it adds an extra little bit of serendipity to the transfer. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've had fun, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you know of someone that would enjoy doing some image transfers, then share this video with them so they can join in the fun. And of course, if you want more fun, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I've got a new video out. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.